Hey guys, my name is Jeff, and here is the 2024 Land Rover Defender, and it is wonderful. Now, traditionally, the Defender nameplate was a rugged off-road farmland utility vehicle that might even be taken off-road recreationally, but unfortunately, it was discontinued in 2012. Well, they've brought it back, but Land Rover changed it. You see, it still has a plethora of off-road goodies, but this time around, Land Rover wanted to make sure you could actually daily drive it. The new L663 Generation Defender is now a unibody, and it's offered in 3 different body styles. First, we have the 90, that's the 2-door hatchback model. Then we have the 110, that's the 4-door hatchback model, that's what this one is. Then we have the 130, an even larger 4-door hatchback model. Pricing starts at $56,900. That'll get you into a 2-door Defender 90. But if you're interested in the top-of-the-line V8 models, well, that'll set you back over $100,000. Now, the Defender does share a fair amount of parts and components with other vehicles in the Land Rover lineup, but the Defender has opted for a more rugged off-road appearance, and it even features some retro styling cues which harken back to the original Defenders. Now, this Defender is, of course, full-time all-wheel drive with the ability to lock the center differential, which means it'll send power to all 4 wheels evenly like 4-wheel drive, and unlike some all-wheel drive vehicles, when one tire loses traction and immediately sends all power to that wheel, you can avoid that with the very smart off-road modes here in the Defender. But that's not all. It also features a lot of various off-road features that veteran Land Rover owners will definitely be familiar with, and it's the most capable Defender Land Rover has ever produced. To check out what makes the new Defender so capable, we have to start with the exterior and underneath of the Defender. Now, this particular Defender is in Fuji white, which is likely going to be one of the most common colors next to black or silver, and is even the official color of Beverly Hills or Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, moving on to the actual off-road prowess of this Defender. Now, the standard ride height of the new Defender is 8.5 inches of ground clearance, which is actually similar to what you would have found in the original Defenders. The big advantage here is this has air suspension. Now, this air suspension gives a lot of diversity to what you can do with this thing. You have a couple different ride height levels, including the supreme off-road ride height, which this currently has, and as you can see, it is quite tall. These off-road ride height modes give this thing 11.5 inches of ground clearance, and as we come to the side, you can see that the front and rear bumpers actually cut off quite sharply after the wheels, which means you get pretty good approach and departure angles. Here in the front, you have about 38 degrees for approach and 40 degrees departure, so that's not too shabby. This thing also has water-fording capabilities with a variety of accessories available from the aftermarket that, of course, you can equip to make this thing even more capable. Now, the water is typically about 3 feet from stock. Obviously, snorkels and other things can improve that, but more importantly, there's even weight sensing technology that comes standard in this thing that can read the water level as you're driving through it. So no more getting out with your measuring stick if wading through the mud to determine if you could drive through it or not. Pretty cool technology here in the Defender. As we move up here, of course, we have some aggressive hood bulges, this sort of nice textured, almost like steel-like appearance here on the hood. We have our headlights, fog lights, all of our various sensors, and as you look, you have this sort of painted cladding here, which isn't typical to being the most protective, but it is here to be somewhat protective if you needed to replace it nonetheless, as opposed to repainting the entire quarter panel, which would be way more expensive. This here says Defender, which is quite nicely labeled. We have these massive 22-inch wheels. There are quite a few different wheels that are actually available. They are 275, 45, 22, massive disc brakes as well to help you come to a stop, and they come in these Continental cross-contact tires. As we continue moving, we have our power adjustable mirrors, which do in fact have cameras. You actually have 4-door keyless entry, which is quite nice. That means you don't have to start with the front door. You can enter any door with the key in your pocket, which is a pretty cool feature in my book, one of my favorite things to see. We do have tinted windows here in the back, and even another window here on the top that blends in quite nicely with the black roof. Some of the other things that are important to notice is we do have quite a nice roof here that does actually have the sunroof option, and you have some roof rails along with a load capacity of about 220 pounds if you wanted to load stuff on top of your Land Rover. Here on the side we do have this nice black box, which is sometimes body color depending on how you get it equipped, but you can also put things like aftermarket Land Rover accessories like ladders or storage boxes there, which is a pretty cool feature. As we come around to the back, this thing is quite sharp. You can see some of the other features, including the independent suspension down below, even the exhaust, tow hooks, but more importantly, even a tow hitch. Now, the top of the line Defender for towing is rated up to 8,200 pounds, which is actually going to be the largest 130, with the 110 being a bit less than that. You do get a spare tire carrier here, which is quite nice, but does take up a little bit of window space. More on that in the interior. And if we go ahead and open this up, we get access to our storage in the back. Now, you do have some roadside assistance kits, pockets. Of course, we do have various storage in here, but the coolest features are actually going to be things like these buttons and even the power that's available. So these buttons here will actually allow you to adjust the rear so you could like level it out if you were camping or cooking on it, whatever the case, while going off-road, which I think is an incredibly cool feature. You can fold down the back row if needed. There's the windows we talked about earlier. And if we lift this up, you have some storage for Land Rover accessories or whatever you wanted to use it for. But that's a quick look at the exterior and underneath here in the Land Rover Defender. The Land Rover Defender is offered with 3 different powertrains. Base, of course, is going to be a turbocharged 4-cylinder known as the P300. Then there's the V8 model, which is the top of the line, very expensive 493 horsepower option. And then there's this, the P400 option, which is likely going to be the most common, but it's fairly stout. It's a turbocharged 3-liter straight 6 or inline 6, which is also a mild 48-volt hybrid system, something we're seeing more and more of these days in a lot of SUVs and trucks, most larger vehicles. Now, this engine produces a very stout 395 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. So I'd say this option and the V8 option are going to be great for this thing because these things are very heavy. This 110 weighs 5,125 pounds, and the even larger 130 is closer to 6,000 pounds. So quite heavy vehicles here, but with the straight 6, this thing will do 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds, which is seriously fast for a vehicle of this size. And the V8 will propel it to 0 to 60 in about 5.2 seconds. And they have a top speed of 119 miles per hour, which isn't the fastest thing in the world, but I really doubt anybody's ever going to see that speed while driving a Land Rover Defender. That's not what it's built for. This thing also features an 8-speed automatic transmission, all-wheel drive with that center locking diff, so you can send power to all 4 wheels evenly using the various off-road modes. But we should also talk fuel economy, as most people are probably going to daily drive their Land Rovers. This thing is an EPA-rated 17 miles per gallon city and 22 miles per gallon highway. So that's not great, but this thing is shaped like a very tall brick, which is not overly aerodynamic. Now, this thing has a 23.8 gallon fuel tank, and given those fuel economy numbers, you can expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 450 miles of range per tank, maybe even more depending on the driving conditions that you're in, which makes it really easy to find yourself, get lost, and go for an adventure in the Land Rover Defender. So moving on to the interior, if we go ahead and open it up, I love what Land Rover did here. They opted for a very rugged and industrial looking interior that really fits the theme of the Defender, even the exposed hardware and textured finishes here in the door. I like that we have, of course, little Defenders here on the displays when the vehicle is currently off. But before we get too far into the tech and features of the front, we have to talk about the back seat, which has seating for up to 7 here in the 110 with the optional 3rd row, and the 130 can actually seat up to 8. Even the 90 features a back seat, even though it's only a 2-door option. Now, the actual seating in here is incredible. I'm 6 foot even for reference, and I have tons of room between here and the top of my head, even for the seats here. I mean, you could fit any person in any shape and size here comfortably in the Land Rover Defender. You also get heated seats. Down here below, we have our controls for our 3rd zone climate control. We have these dated and very antiquated USB Type A connectors here, but they'll still work. It's just a very nice experience here in the back, which, you know, does a lot in terms of functionality to take more adults on road trips. But let's go ahead and move back into the actual front here, which you might notice these perforated seats. These are, of course, heated and cooled. They are power adjustable. You get a heated steering wheel as well, so this thing will keep you very well weathered throughout the various elements. We go ahead and climb in the vehicle. We have a push power stop start button there. Go ahead and deactivate the voices, and the Land Rover Defender roars to life. You have two digital displays here along with a heads-up display that includes sign recognition, so it can tell you what the speed limit is. Very nice if you're not familiar in the area you're driving. Now, if we start with the driver display here, this is of course digital, it is adjustable, and when you press these buttons here, they move around, which is very cool. You can get to things like your info panels, even your display layout, which can change with the way this is set up, including a map dedicated mode. If you struggle with reading directions, the Land Rover makes it as easy as possible. But my personal favorite is going to be this 2-dial mode. You also have a variety of buttons here, like this one. This black diamond is actually sort of like a joker button that you can set up to whatever you want. Right now, if we go ahead and press it, you can see that it immediately pulls up those cameras, which give a great view, including the exterior of the Land Rover Defender. So you can see all sorts of stuff here that makes it very practical to drive, because it is, after all, a fairly large vehicle. You do have a lot of driver assists that come here on the Defender, which are all here on the right side for how you manage them, including your lane assist, which turns green when it's activated, and you'll also see it on the main display. So that's pretty cool that they make it that visible. Of course, this also has the radar in front of you to help adjust it, our heated steering wheel controls. Your volume can be adjusted through this knob. It's very simple and straightforward for using this vehicle, so I really appreciate that. Here in the center, we have some vents on top here, which are a little bit funky, our hazard button, and then we have this display, which feels a little bit underwhelming considering the size of the interior here, but let's be honest, you don't want to be too distracted by this while you're driving anyways. We go ahead and take a look. This thing does have CarPlay and Android Auto, Bluetooth connectivity, Sirius XM, all those great things, but it also features some other tech. It can be a bit slow to respond. You do have seat adjustments where you can even adjust the rear seat controls. You can see the cameras, valet modes, 4x4 modes, eco, low traction launch, so you can get unstuck, and the vehicle dimensions is pretty cool. So right now we're in the normal height, and you can see we have 30 degrees of approach, 37 departure, and even 8 inches of ground clearance. But we go ahead and touch our air suspension here. The truck is currently lifting, the off-road height has been selected, and we give it a sec. This will go ahead and update. And now it has our new numbers, 11 inches of ground clearance, 38 degrees approach, and 40 departure. That's a pretty cool feature, that it is sort of an adaptive system to give you accurate measurements, which they take that a step further if we keep scrolling down to the weight sensing mode. This is that water mode I mentioned earlier that'll tell you the readouts of the actual water as you're driving through it, which is quite cool. We have the media, which has all those features I mentioned earlier, and in this vehicle is run through a Meridian sound system, which sounds pretty good and can be adjusted to your liking. You have your air quality sensing, even some vehicle health settings, all of this technology that can really be adjusted however you like and managed so easily. As we move further down here, we have the selector for our 8-speed automatic transmission. It's this sort of trigger-like approach. You go ahead and pull the button, put it in drive, move it over into sport, and then you can push it up into reverse. Cameras come on, and then park button, which is easy to use. Here in the center, we have a lot of buttons here, but it's fairly minimal as a lot of these are multi-function buttons. You have your hill descent control, we have traction control, we have our low range, our air suspension adjustments, and a lot of our climate control settings. Right here though, however, if we push this button, this will actually allow us to select our various drive modes. You can see we have eco, and then we have comfort, all sorts of various grass, gravel, mud ruts, sand, rock crawl, and wade drive modes. Those are all quite nice. Now you might have noticed that there's no actual dedicated center lock diff. As you can see here, there is the center lock diff. It's going to lock and unlock automatically as the very smart computer system in the Land Rover Defender determines when it needs it locked or unlocked. Like, you don't want it locked while you're driving on regular roads. The other cool feature is currently these are your temperature adjustments, but when you push them, you can now adjust your heated and cooled seats, which is very nice. And when you touch this one, you can actually adjust your fan speed, which is a very cool feature. Below that, we have some USB Type-C, USB Type-A, additional cigarette lighters. We do have some storage under here, these cup holders with these air bubbles to try and hold the drinks tight. We do have a smart charger and an actual fridge, one of my favorite features here. You can see it gets so cold, it has frost in here. The drinks I've put in here have come out colder than when I put them in, which is incredibly cool. You can also turn it off if you don't need to use it. Here on the passenger side, it is dual zone. They get their own controls up here as well. USB charger and this nice little storage shelf with their own memory seatings, which is great. At the top here, we actually have this one-touch adjustment. You can open it up with one touch for your sunroof, which is a very nice feature. If you shut the vehicle off with the roof open, it automatically closes, and upon restarting the vehicle, it'll automatically reopen, which is a very smart feature. You also have your various gate and garage functionality. You have a rear view mirror, which also happens to be a video mirror. I love seeing this in SUVs because bigger ones like this Defender can be hard to see out of, and this completely negates having any issues or tall passengers in your back seat, or even filling it up with camping gear. If you were doing that, you see past all of that, and it makes it that much safer in the Defender. Fairly simple, but very rugged with lots of cool features, especially off-road features here in the Land Rover Defender. Okay, so what's it like to drive the Land Rover Defender? Well, really, it is just delightful. I mean, this thing is fantastic to drive. First of all, having air suspension not only helps in off-road circumstances, as we pointed out earlier, but it also helps in just giving you a very, very comfortable ride. This thing has these awesome eco and comfortable drive modes that are great for just driving on regular asphalt. And because most people are going to use this like a daily driver, it really has to excel there and more so be a recreational off-road vehicle. And the Defender does exactly that. I drove this thing over 2 hours to get it up here to beautiful Flagstaff, Arizona, and the drive was so comfortable. I couldn't have asked for a better road trip vehicle. And now that I'm here, I get to enjoy the off-road capabilities of the Defender and get to take in the views of Flagstaff, Arizona. All of the features are so easy to use. The fact that you have this up-high command-like seating position in this vehicle makes it very, very comfortable and very easy to see. The cameras give you great visibility while off-roading, so you can put the wheels exactly where you want them. The versatility of things like the backup cameras and all that just make it so easy to drive this vehicle. It looks big on the outside, and it is big, but it doesn't feel big to drive. Everything about this vehicle is just very, very pleasant. When you need it, because you have to go uphill quite a lot to get up here to Flagstaff, this 6-cylinder motor has plenty of power. It's such a great motor. Really, the 110 is definitely the sweet spot, and it gives you so many different options in this thing. You really can't ask for anything more in this. It's easy to drive. The power steering's not overdone, but it's not hard to drive either. It's very smooth and easy to manage through whatever you might encounter. And it's so soundproof on the inside. The Meridian system does a good job of canceling out whatever you might go against. The cooling seats are very, very cold, almost as cold as the fridge that you have in here. Everything in here is just so comfortable and easy to use. This vehicle, I think if you take one for a test drive, you won't be disappointed with the Land Rover Defender. There's really not much to say about the driving because it's just so good. The brakes are good. It doesn't have a lot of body roll like you would expect from large vehicles. It's really quite impressive what Land Rover did here. They brought the Defender back, and I would say they couldn't have done a better job doing so. So there you have it. That is a quick look at the Land Rover Defender, which has been out for a few years now, so I'm sure you've heard a few things here and there about this vehicle, and a lot of the response and feelings are overwhelmingly positive. This is a fantastic vehicle, and I hope from this video you saw some of the reasons why people love the new Defender. Now let's say you're interested in purchasing one. Well, then the question becomes, which one do you buy? Now personally, I think the 4-door models are where the value is at, specifically the 110 models. Obviously the 130 is going to be a bit more expensive, but it has more towing capacity. The 90s are my personal favorite body style. I think they look super cool, but the 110 4 doors is only $3,000 more per trim level, and you just get so much more room and space. So this is way more practical in my opinion. Plus the weight difference isn't going to be that crazy, even though it does step up quite a bit to almost 6,000 pounds with the 130. So it's ultimately up to you. I think all of them are fantastic vehicles. The V8 lights don't quite feel as value heavy, but they are going to be ultimately super collectible if you wanted to play a skeptics game. I would assume those are the best investment grades because there's going to be so few of them because of that limiting price factor, as opposed to these straight 6 models. These are definitely where it's at. I wouldn't get the 4-cylinder model. I just don't think it's going to have quite enough oomph, but the 6-cylinder is perfect. In fact, I would say this thing is actually quite fast. I mean, 0 to 60 in the 5-second range is really, really impressive. So with that, that's the end of the video. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them in the comment section down below, or let me know what you think of the Defender if you own one, or what your experience has been. If you enjoyed the video, could leave me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it, and consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.